Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Costanza, and I am honored to be joined by my Foursquare friend here, Dan Richmond. And this is our first, we didn't discuss really a title for the show, but let's call it Two Guys Talking About Foursquares, the Foursquare Show. Hey, we're open to suggestions. Two guys and, well, I don't know,
Two guys and four squares. I don't know if
two,
that's gonna work. We'll come up with something.
we'll come
We'll
up with
come up with
something.
something.
We're open to suggestion. Um, I figured since this is our first, and I'm using the word show very loosely, show, why don't we start by just letting our viewers know who we are, what we do, where we're from, just a little bit of introduction. Our our main goal here though is to talk about the wonderful and glorious and underappreciated sport, not game, not activity, sport of Foursquare or Four Squares. That'll be a whole separate topic that I'm sure Dan and I will discuss. Um, Dan, do you want to start? Do you want me to start? Do you want to go
Sure, I'll
through
kick it
intro?
off.
All right.
Dan Richmond. It's funny, usually when I'm introducing myself, it's for work, and I can talk about what I do for work. But I think I'll introduce myself with kind of my Foursquare history. So where I am, I'm in Houston, Texas, live here with my family. If you want to know a little bit about my interests, you can just kind of look behind me. Let's see if I can get these right. I like airplanes, cars. This is a caricature of me with an electric car. There's a little wind turbine right there. Got some more airplanes going up there. And all of my wife's shoes are in the closet behind me. So those are often in my shots and meetings. But no, my Foursquare history, it's funny, I only ever played it in one place, which was at an overnight camp at the University of Virginia. I'll refer to it as SEP. It's called the Summer Enrichment Program, and we would play it in all of our free time. Everybody seemed to know the rules. For some reason, there were never any arguments about what the rules were, what we were supposed to do, anything like that. We was just this community of Foursquare players that came together for 2 weeks every summer and then dispersed back out to all of our schools across the state. And then the next summer came back and played again. So I never played it outside of that camp
And
and just
sorry,
played
Dan,
it for
so
2 weeks straight every year.
that's in college, is that correct?
This was fifth grade through
Oh,
11th
okay.
grade, and then I
Okay.
was a counselor at that same camp, so I played for 6, 7 weeks straight in college.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was as a kid and then as a college student.
Tell us a little bit more about so you're married, you have a couple children, if that's okay to share. That's
Absolutely,
okay.
absolutely. How'd you figure I was married? Was it how I referred to my wife's shoes? Um, yes, I've got two kids. They are two girls who are 8 and 6, and they'll be getting home from school a little bit after we finish this recording. They have not been introduced to Foursquare yet, although one of them really does like airplanes and flying. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. Um, I actually don't know if they play at school. They've certainly got the equipment for it. I don't know that there's a court at school, but I was at a camp with one of them at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. So I was at space camp with my 8-year-old. And we
Cool.
noticed that back behind the dorms, there were a couple of Foursquare courts just painted onto the pavement back there. So clearly there's people doing it. But yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that,
Scientists are doing it.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I feel like it's one of those things that everyone did, and then it just sort of fades into the background, and no one can find anyone to do it with.
oh my goodness, yes. And which is why, at least it's my experience, that when I talk to people about four squares, I very rarely get somebody to say, "What is that? I've never heard of that before." It's almost somehow ingrained within most people because, to your point, I think around elementary school-ish times I mean, there's four squares painted on almost all like recess areas, and whether or not the kids are actually playing it or not, hopefully they are, it's just kind of known, which is cool. But now we need to try to get it to be a little bit more known. outside of the elementary school
Or
covering
keep
there.
keep it
But
with the
keep it
kids as they
going, keep it
continue to
going.
grow. It's
Yeah,
not the kind of thing you grow out of. It's
yeah.
funny because at the World Championships last year, I flew in from Texas, flew into Boston, drove up to Maine, met Eric up there. Got there a little early, and I was like, "Is anyone showing up to this thing?" And then all of a sudden, there were a bunch of adults playing, and one or two school buses full of kids pulled up, and it just
It was
thrilled me. It was
yeah,
amazing.
it was like a WWE entrance. Like all of a
Oh,
sudden, like it just what, like 40 kids just show. They all had uniforms on and everything. We will definitely get to the World Championships for sure. But thank you for that intro, Dan.
absolutely,
A little
absolutely.
bit about myself. Okay, so oh, by the way, you left out a little part. I already know you're a super humble guy, but you are you are an amazing Foursquare player. You came in third, fourth,
I
fourth,
think I came in
fifth,
fourth, so I was the
fourth? You
first
came
one
in
out in
fourth.
the final
Okay.
four.
Okay. So and it's always awesome to make the final four. It's kind of like NCAA, but especially in Foursquare because four
That's
square and
it.
you're like one
Yeah.
of the only people left with nobody else in line. Um, so yes, I just wanted to make sure that you give yourself a nice little tap on the back there because you deserve it.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah,
To preview some topics that I'm sure we'll get to, we never had scoring points, ranks. It was always just a
just a
continuous game.
rotating. Yeah,
And the interesting thing about the way we always played it was you'd start out with like three people. You know, a couple people would show up, one of them would go get the ball, and then the rest of the group would start to grow and grow and grow. So in the very beginning, when you started the game, you have your rapid fire, you're always in, then the line gets longer and
yeah,
longer and longer. And in the
yeah,
championship, that line starts out as long as it's going to get, and people
yeah. It's
progressively
the
go out.
opposite. That's right.
Yeah, so you get
Yeah,
less and less rest as the tournament goes on.
yeah. It's a good point. Okay. Well, oh, and you are originally from Virginia, is that
Yes,
correct? Okay.
Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay. And you went to the Houston, Texas area when after college or when is it that you moved?
So I grew up in the DC area,
Yeah.
lived there until I was 18, came down to Houston to go to Rice for college, and then ended up staying, met this really awesome woman down here, ended up getting married, having a couple of kids with her, and just kind of liked it's a little, no offense to the East Coast, it's a little more chill down here.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
DC can be a little self-important, a little power hungry. So I just liked the vibe down here and met a
Yeah.
bunch of really nice people and found a job and decided to stay.
Yeah. What do you do for a living? I mean, little peek behind the curtain, folks. Unfortunately, Dan and I are not professional Foursquare players. Fortunately, as far as I know, that does not exist. Another topic we'll get to. But what do you do for your actual day job?
So I do electricity for my day job. And for anybody not from Texas, the Texas electricity market is a little bit different. You shop for where you get your electricity from. You can pick from any number of providers, any number of they're called electricity plans and contracts, and you can choose green electricity, free nights, free weekends. You can kind of tailor these
Wow.
contracts to the way you live your life. So my job is product development for a large electricity company called NRG. If you know the Houston Texans, they play at NRG Stadium. That's us. Um, and what it is kind of coming up with new business models and new ways of doing things. So saying, well, what can we do around electric cars? How do we incorporate that into our business? And how do we incorporate that into our business in a way that customers are going to like? So it's very kind of free ranging, but figuring out where are we going in the next couple of years and what are customers going to be buying and how are they going to be interacting with their electricity company 3, 4, 5 years from now. So it's a lot of
Yeesh.
fun. It's a lot of
Yeah, that
fun.
is definitely not the way electricity works here in Massachusetts.
So I've heard.
Um, but it should. It's you should be able to customize all the things you're paying for, cable, internet, electricity, all the things. But
Oh yeah,
that's pretty cool.
it's
Um,
fun.
all right. So I am, as mentioned, I am originally and still currently reside in Massachusetts. I'm actually in a town called Northbridge, which is in the central southern part of the state, kind of in between Boston and Providence. It takes me about an hour to get to Boston, maybe about 50 minutes to get to Providence. Um, pretty small town, about 16,000 people, I think, in the Worcester area. If you've ever heard of the second biggest city in Massachusetts. Um, I'm 43 years of age, and I am married with three children. 19, she just turned 19. And in college, she goes to UMaine, which I still
Oh,
am not.
nice.
I'm kind of still can't figure out how the hell I have a child in college, but um, 11-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy. Um, let's see, I am a project manager at a benefits administration company within the communications department, which is a mouthful, and I don't even want to get into all of what the hell all that means because it's not important. Not that what you were explaining. Actually, what you explained was important, Dan. What I do, okay, what I do is important, but we don't have to talk about it. Um, they are based out of Des Moines, Iowa. I have a lot of nice friends from that area, and because we are a remote work base, so from all across the country. So I do have a lot of these kind of video meetings all day. I think that is something that actually came out of COVID, which was a good thing. Although I was working remotely before COVID. But anyway,
You just didn't see the people you were working with. You only heard them on the phone.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
um, Four squares. So similar to you, um, well, I started playing four squares at summer camps, and it wasn't even really a camp. I guess it was a camp. So in our town, I don't know why, but in our town, we have like different little sections within our town. There's Linwood, there's Rockdale, there's Riverdale, which is where I'm from. There's what else? Vale. There's all these like little sections within our town. And all of these sections within our town all had parks. Um, and in these parks, they had Foursquare. And they back when I was a kid, they had summer parks, a Parks and Rec Parks program. And during the summer, it was really cool. During the summer, it was free. Anybody, any kid from I think age 6 to 16 could just go to wherever park you wanted, although typically you'd go to the park that's closest to you. There were usually two or three camp counselors who were usually like in the high school, college age range, you know, playing and watching over the kids. And we would all play, not just Foursquare, but wiffle ball, kickball, even arts and crafts, things like that. But the main biggest sport and activity and thing that we did at these camps was Foursquare, or at least at Riverdale, which is where I went. And it was where I kind of fell in love with the sport, and I'm sure you probably can agree, it's more than just playing the sport. It's the camaraderie, it's the friendships, it's the fun that you're having while you're playing. And I mean, obviously it helps when you are good at something. So that's another thing, thing that kind of plays a part where we would also have at the end of every summer all of the parks, which I five or six of them within the town, would all meet at one park at the end of the summer to have a Foursquare town championship. So
Nice.
that's where, legends were made and heroes were born. Um, Proud to say I won my fair share. Um, Unfortunately, there were a couple that I didn't win because I was sick for some,
Ooh.
I think more than one that occurred with, unfortunately. But that's where my kind of love for four squares began. I then became like you, a counselor. So at age 16, 17, 18, 19, kind of through college, I was a counselor and then was able to enjoy it through that way, which also included kind of coaching and mentoring, some of the kids with the game among other games that we played. Um, and then once that came to an end, there was a big part of my life, probably from my early 20s through my mid 30s, that there was not a lot of Foursquare playing going on for me. Um, but I always had that. that little part of me that always wanted to do so and enjoyed it. Maybe every now and then my brother and I, he was just a couple years younger than me. We would just, play a little two square. Although I am now remembering that my, I take this back. Okay. I purchased a condo, coming out of college, and it had a one-car garage. And in the garage, I literally painted, probably wasn't supposed to do this, but I literally painted two squares because I couldn't fit four squares, in the garage. And my cousin, my brother, friends, we would play. So I did kind of pick it up and continue through those times, which was fun. I think I forgot about that because I guess technically it was two squares, but same idea. And then I think I was about 39-ish. So I don't know, 3, 4 years ago. Maybe I was having like kind of like I'm gonna be turning 40 soon, a little like not
Midlife
midlife
crisis.
crisis, but somewhere in there I was kind of like, you know, why hasn't Foursquare? I just went on a big Google search, and that's where I stumbled across the World Championships.
And that is exactly the same thing that happened to me. It was either, oh, if I think hard enough, I can come up with it. It was either 2011 or 2012.
Hmm.
I stumbled across the World Championships and said, oh my God, this is something I have to do.
So
And it
you
took
actually came
me
across
10,
it
12
way,
years to get there.
yeah, yeah, you came
Yeah.
across it way earlier than I did, and then it's taken you some time to make it happen.
Hmm.
Um, for me, again, it was 2019-ish, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, man, I wish I found this when I was, 20.
Yeah.
Um, but hey, I found it now, and it's in Maine. I'm in Massachusetts. Unlike you, at least it was a little bit more doable for me. Um, I got to do this. I got to see what this is all about. I got to see how I compare to the world's best. Like, am I as
Same.
good as I think I am? Maybe I suck to compare to these
I mean,
people who are,
the last time I played, it was against a bunch of 12-year-olds.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
am I
yeah,
actually any good? Like, did
yeah,
they all get better? What?
right.
Or like, I thought I was pretty good at this. I was certainly serving a lot and thinking, why am I not getting out? Why are these people moving in such illogical directions? Yeah, it's like, no, I gotta go. It's like, I
Yeah,
think I can win this
yeah,
thing.
exactly. So, COVID hit. So the World Championships um, didn't happen, and were I don't want to say canceled, but well, those years they were canceled. I think it was 2019,
2021,
2020,
22.
yeah, yeah, somewhere in that range. Um, which
And I think
obviously was
even
the
in 23, they were canceled, if I remember right.
23 they were not canceled because that was the one
Okay.
yeah, that was the one I won. So I'm aware
Okay,
that
so
they
you're pretty sure about that one then.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure about that one. But 2022, 2021, and I want to say 2020. I'm not exactly sure. It was either
Don't
those
remember
3 or 2 years they were canceled. I don't remember. But whenever a few months prior to the first one being canceled is when I stumbled across it because I was all ready to go,
Oh,
and then they got canceled, unfortunately. But I had it. I knew like, okay, well, I'm doing this the next time or whenever it comes back. Um, so yeah, I attended. So when they came back in 2023, um, it was so now, Dan, maybe we can, and my first time was 2023. Yours was this
mine was
past year in
2024.
2024. Maybe we can, yeah, talk a little bit about our experience with the World Championships. So I guess I'll give a little bit of context, though. I guess and if anybody is listening to this, and I'm incorrect, please fact check me or let us know. But I'm just gonna at least give what I think the case is, which is that the World Championships are somehow tied to the website square4.org. I want to say that the person who runs that website, his name is Sean, I believe, um, is who kind of spearheaded the event meeting being the World Championships from occurring. I believe he may have partnered with another individual who is still very much involved. His name is Peter, up in Bridgetown, Maine. I don't know the connection there. I don't know how all that came to fruition, but it was literally almost 20 years ago because this upcoming World Championships that will happen in 2025 is the 20th year anniversary. So again, Dan and I are kind of late to the game when it comes to all this here, but again, I don't know how all that kind of happened, but I do know that the World Championships is somehow tied to squareforg.org. They basically used all of the Foursquare rules that squareforg.org um, used when they were really I guess squarefork.org, though still an active website, is nowhere near as active as it used to be. Apparently there used to be I think it was tied to maybe the Boston Foursquare Club or something like that, and they would meet almost on a weekly basis. They would have um like Q&As, and people would write in and they would it was a real active website basically that I think Sean and others really, handled and owned, and that all trickled into this world championship. So that's the best explanation I can give. Maybe we can try to have Sean or others on to talk through that a little bit more. Um, but needless to say, I then attended the World Championships in 2023, again up in Bridgetown, Maine. Um, I was just completely like e extremely excited and flabbergasted at the love that others had for this quirky sport that maybe we all felt, I know I did, like, am I the only one? Um, the just seeing kids and adults and women and men of all ages playing, regardless of who won and all that stuff was awesome. Um, and in 2023, it was the first year back from COVID. Um, and it was interesting the way it was run. It was run a little bit different than the one that we just did this past year, Dan, which again we'll talk about.
Yeah.
And it was obviously an honor to have won. I won in 2023 the World Championship, and I got a little bit of notoriety in the local parts of where I live, which again we can talk about that. Um, and it was just really cool. And I knew that was something that I was going to do as far as I could tell, and going forward. What was you kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, but your experience to the World Championships?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just looking on Square 4 as well. Sean is updating it. There is some information about 2025. 2025
Yes, I
is
think
on
April,
April
right?
12th.
Yeah.
April 12th. So good to see that it's still happening. But my experience with it was obviously finding the website in about 2012 and literally just keeping it in the back of my mind for 10 years. It was like it's always there. I always wanted to go, couldn't do it for any number of reasons. And it was always kind of that, are you really going to fly up from Texas to Maine to play Foursquare? Like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm really going to do it one day. So got up there. I have to fly to Boston. It's hard to get to Maine itself. Um, Fly to Boston, rent a car, drive up. It was going to be a weekend, and fortunately, the timing worked out pretty well. So got there early and hung out. There was nobody. It was at I always think it's a church, but I think it's actually a rec
The
center.
town hall, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I
yeah.
guess it's like um almost like one of those historical venues. I don't know what the background is or what the but Peter is the individual. He's very nice gentleman, older gentleman who runs the World Championships. Um, and he, I believe, mentioned that it's some type of historical location within Bridgetown, Maine. So I don't know. Again, I don't know the details there, but yeah, it's at a town hall. It's almost like a big gymnasium, basically.
Yeah, it's a big basketball court. I think it's
Yeah,
even got six, two for the main, then two little side courts.
yeah.
Um, so it's a cool venue. You could tell with some old original wood on the floor, great for bouncing. And just getting in there and kind of meeting people as they come in. People come in slowly, and then as it gets closer to start time, more and more people coming in. So people just kind of warming up and playing. And I was trying to figure out, well, how aggressive is everybody? Is this legit? Is this a friendly game? Because the games that I play now are with my daughters and nieces and nephews, and like I gotta go kind of easy, and I can't go out there absolutely dominating everybody. So the ability to kind of unleash, I was like, look, during competition, it's coming out. I'm looking forward to going as hard as I can and competing as hard as I can.
Mhm.
But starting out, it was just kind of friendly. Everyone's super nice. And even during the gameplay, obviously there's disagreements, there's arguments about the rules. You were talking earlier about some of the things we like about Foursquare. And one of them, this comes from a Calvin and Hobbes comic, if you're a fan of that. And I like arguing about the rules that we make up because they're always different. People come in, they're like, what are you talking about? You can't
Yeah.
do that. People catch the ball, they think it's okay. And half the people are like, yeah, it's totally cool. And the other half are like, what are you doing?
Yeah. The
Of course you're
variances
out.
in the rules in Foursquare. I mean, and maybe that's part of circling back to what we had kind of started talking about, and maybe that's part of the, I don't know, the disconnect in terms of trying to have the game be more just out there because it's, and we're gonna dive into all this as
Oh,
whether it
yeah.
be later in this or during our future shows, but yeah, the variance in rules is amazing, and it's kind of cool to hear. I mean, I still hear rules that I have never heard of. I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. I think it all goes back to all of these rules come out of the imagination of a child on the playground. It's
Mm.
like whatever they can dream up. As an adult, you're like, I can't even keep track of these. And of course, the kids can't either, which I think is half the fun to say, well, what is even going on here? What's happening? And of course, half of the rules are derived from, I mean, they're literally house rules. They're, oh, well, there's a wall back here that we need to play around. Or, well, one side of the court is a garage. Or, like, don't break the window in the house that we're playing next to. The court that I play on most often now is the driveway in front of my in-laws' house. And we don't mark it. We just use the lines of cement. So some squares are a little bit bigger. One of them's got a curve in it. One half of it is the garage. So it's like, well, how do you play off of that? What happens if it hits, right there? Who's responsible for what? And it just sort of builds organically, which is one of the nice things about it.
Yeah, yeah, love that. Let's see. So, where are we going to want to go next? We talked about, we kind of talked about who we are,
Let's
our
talk about the
Foursquare background,
we talked a little bit about the court.
the core. Yeah.
I don't know that I want to get into sort of several of the topics we have are scoring
Hmm.
rules.
Well, I think what's going to
Um,
happen in our conversations is it's almost going to be there's almost twofold here. So we're going to be chatting just about Foursquare and rules and our experiences, but at the same time, we're also going to be talking about um, we want to also maybe make some adjustments to the World Championship rules and procedures and process as well. So we're going to almost be doing that simultaneously. And Dan and I have kind of shared a good amount of notes, but before this recording, and we have a big slot of things that we want to talk about. Of course, we're gonna. So what our goal is that we're hoping to do this monthly. Obviously, we as we already talked about, this is not just our this is not we have day jobs and families and other things that are just getting in the way of our Foursquare fun. Um, but we're hoping to maybe, you know what, why don't we try, I'm throwing this out at you here, Dan, maybe the
yeah,
first
yeah, let's do it.
Friday of every month. Maybe that's something that we can shoot for, although I'm looking at next month, which is November 1st is a Friday. So I don't know if we'll do that day or maybe the following Friday, but we'll figure all that out. Um,
Well, I'll tell you one Friday that we won't do a recorded podcast, and that's going to be next Friday. Because next Friday, I'm flying up to Boston, and Eric and I are going to get together.
yes, that is
That's
true.
I
Back, so
loved
yes.
I loved going up to Maine so much. We don't get for everybody up in the certainly the Northeast, certainly in the other northern parts of the country. We don't get leaves changing color down here. We also don't get what you might call cold. Today is October 4th. As you can see, I'm wearing short sleeves. That's because the high was 93 degrees today. And it's October.
Yeah.
So
See, the
my
grass is always greener. It really is.
oh
Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's beautiful fall weather here in Massachusetts, and I love the fall. I just hate what comes after it. Um, so, when I hear 90s and probably, I'm guessing palm trees. Do you have palm trees in Houston? You do, right?
we do. We had to cut
Yeah,
ours down. They died in
yeah,
the
yeah.
freeze of 2021 because,
Uh,
we know what years there was actually a freeze. But we have a lot of oak trees here, actually. So just
okay.
these big sprawling, I'm looking out over, I sit in the front of my house looking at the street, and the oak trees will grow over the street and kind of form a canopy. So it's beautiful place to live. Tomorrow we are having my daughter's sixth birthday party at our house. It's
Ah.
it's a pool party, so yeah, gotta heat the pool a little bit because apparently it's not quite warm enough yet. Um, but yeah, it's definitely warm down here. And what I've found for me is I need to go reset my bodily clock about once a year and just go somewhere that's cold and go, okay, I had some winter. Now I know that spring is coming, and it's just
Mhm,
kind of
mhm.
works out a little bit better. Works out
Yeah.
a little bit. So this will be a nice one to get up and get a little fall, get a little color, see the leaves change, and just take some time with my wife and relax up there too.
Yeah, I was just actually up in Maine last weekend visiting my daughter at UMaine, and the foliage has already begun up there. It looks beautiful. It's starting in
Awesome.
Massachusetts. I mean, there's definitely some color, but I think the peak is probably another week or so away here. But New Hampshire and Maine is definitely at its peak. And yes, I am looking forward to seeing you in person again, Dan. And we're still trying to figure out what we're gonna do, and maybe we'll hit the ball around a little bit. Trying to
So
see what happens there. But all right, you know what? Let's do this. Let's jump into our first kind of topic outside of the little intros here. Our goal is to really just keep this show at less than an hour, so maybe we have another 15 minutes or so. And if we have to stop halfway through, which I'm guessing we might, um, then that's okay. But see, try to kind of categorize what we're talking about into different buckets, and so that makes sense for you all and for us mainly. First thing, which is kind of I guess, I don't know, the crux of it all here, the object of four squares, how to actually win the game, and that there may not be that, because to your point, Dan, most of the four squares that you have played has been just to play for fun, which is great in and of itself. So sometimes, again, as you said, you're just playing for fun. Yeah, you're trying to get each other out and whatnot, but no one's keeping score. How you're keeping score is a whole nother thing, which I think we're gonna get to. But um,
and if I can cut in
yeah, yeah.
all the time that we played, it was obvious who was good. They weren't getting out
Mm,
as much. They
mm,
were in the game more. They were, just
mhm.
playing more and more. Then you
Yeah,
go, well, but who's better than who? Do you have to have them
yeah,
square off against each other? Like, well,
right.
what if who's just better on that one serve? Or, it's like, So
And and
how do you determine who's better?
and man, we're getting into some deep stuff here, because just because someone may win in in a two square battle, like, hey, that guy is really good, and he's really good, or she, let's put them together and see what happens. Yeah, that might work. And somebody, player X may beat player Y in two squares 90% of the time, which may mean, hey, that person's better. But guess what?
The one
That
that
doesn't mean they're
matters.
better at four square.
It's true.
There's a
It's true.
whole nother dynamic and strategic involvement and mental and physical and all these things that are involved in the actual sport, which is what we're referring. When I talk about two square, we're talking about four square. So that's a whole nother thing. I want to stop and put a pause here at a moment, because I just realized I mentioned this earlier though. Maybe we should start with, okay, is it four square
I
singular?
was gonna
Is
ask
it
you.
is it four squares plural? Is it the number four square? Is it the you spell it out with the I guess the number versus the spelling out Four doesn't really matter too much, but I do hear a lot of deviation when it comes to the singular versus the plural of saying squares. I grew up with it being four squares plural. So that's how I default. But
And
I
I
know
think,
that Four
and I
Square
think
Championship
the
and square4.com all go with the singular, right?
Yeah, and I think hearing you say four squares is about the first time I've ever heard it.
Ah,
So it
okay.
was
So
just
you go with
always Foursquare. There
okay.
was I don't even know if it's still around, some social network that was called Foursquare for a while.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I was curious. It's just sort of always been that way in your
It's
head.
always yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I don't know. It's just the way that again I explained how I came about in Foursquare, and everyone who I played with as a kid, my camp counselors, everyone involved, always referred to it as Four Squares, which is why I just naturally always called it that way. The first time I've heard it be referred to as Foursquare is actually when I stumbled across square4.com
Interesting.
and yeah, yeah. But it sounds like maybe I'm in the minority. I mean, you can look at it either way, right? I mean, four square, there's one four square, or there's four squares, the segmented squares within the four square. I don't think there's a right or a wrong, but it's
And
just another
it kind of
variance to the
reminds
whole
me
thing.
of, baseball 120 years ago. Was it baseball or baseball? And so you can see, like, if you read
Yeah,
old newspaper articles and sports reporting, they're like, it's baseball, as
yeah,
opposed
yeah,
to, and then it got amalgamated together, and
yeah,
clearly everybody agrees now, but who knows how
yeah.
long it took us to get there.
Maybe we're gonna be like the Thomas Jefferson and the George Washington of four squares, Dan and
Excellent.
I, or well, to your analogy, would it be Babe Ruth and
Babe Ruth and Lou
um,
Gehrig would
Lou
be the two
Gehrig?
that are,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I'll take that. I'll be Lou Gehrig though. You be Babe Ruth. You
Oh,
okay with that?
I always liked Lou more, but
Oh, all right.
I'll take the Babe. I mean,
Well, we'll figure that out.
somebody calling me Babe Ruth, like, that's never an insult. Yeah.
Okay, well, we got to the bottom of that. I, as I mentioned earlier, I'm 43, so I definitely did not grow up with like YouTube and Instagram and My Face and all those things. So if you are, I think I'm going to say this correctly. If you're listening, watching to this show and you're able to comment, um, please feel free to let us know how uh, have termed Foursquare or Four Squares. And that being said, feel free to send us any questions. Feel free to let us know about anything you'd like us to discuss. Let us know if you'd like to be on the show. We are completely open to any suggestions at all. Again, your topics may definitely be touched upon at some future show because, again, we have a document. I'll tell you how many pages it is.
I think it was 8 or 9 when I
Is
went
it?
to go
Yeah,
print it out.
seems about right. Yeah, about 9 pages of just things that we want to discuss, and we're not even halfway through first page right now. So, um, but yeah, feel free to let us know if you'd like to join in on the fun. Okay, so the object of the game, how to win. The way that so when I was a kid and whatnot and playing four squares at park, to your point, a lot of the times we would just play for fun. Let's just play. We don't have to have a tournament or anything like that. Let's just play. But every now and then, usually at least once a day, we would say, okay, let's have a tournament. And
What
our
happened?
tour and our tournament consisted of using actually what has now been adopted. I kind of spearheaded that to have it be outs per person. Again, there are many different ways, which I think we're going to talk about, but the way that I always knew of how to determine a winner and the object of the game is to be having a tournament and everybody got an assigned amount of outs. So, for example, you would get, say, 10 outs per person. And every time you got out in Foursquare, that would be, okay, one, and then two, and then three, and so on. So actually getting out was a bad thing. You didn't want to get it out. And then once you got the assigned amount of outs in this hypothetical, if you got 10 outs, you are now eliminated from the tournament. And eventually everybody, and this is again now what we do in the World Championships, eventually everybody would be eliminated until there was four people left, three people left, two people left, one person left, and that was the winner. That is the way that I always knew. I didn't even know that there were any other ways of determining a winner and the object of the game. I'll pause there. I think you mentioned again, you've always really played for fun, but were you aware of any other ways of playing?
No, the first time I saw any scoring mechanism was when I went to square4.org.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think I read about theirs and it was more of a points, more of an offensive based
yeah.
system. The thing I like, and that sort of one of the reasons that the outs resonates with me. It's going to sound bad. There really isn't a winner in Foursquare. You can only lose. You either lose or you survive. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't. You're not going up anywhere. You're just trying to keep
Just
yourself
trying to
from going
say, just trying to
down.
tread water. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And the idea of the outs is like, well, that's all you can do. You either lose or you keep going. So it makes sense to me.
Mhm.
We never had any, so all of our games were always time limited, and clearly everybody was willing to play for as long as the counselors and the teachers and everybody would possibly let us. I mean, these games just go on
Yeah,
and nobody was quitting. We were all young kids with endless energy playing a game that we liked.
yeah,
Nobody had any real serious arguments or anything. It was just a lot of fun.
yeah.
So coming in, I think this is the first year that the out system was
It
used.
was. Yes.
So that is all I have ever known.
Hmm.
I don't know any sort of point-based system other than having read about it.
Yeah. So the 2023,
Hmm.
which was my first time at the World Championships, it was, again, this was the year coming out of the 2 or 3 year hiatus because of COVID and whatnot. But it's my understanding prior to that, this is the way they've always done it, which again was tied to the square4.org website, which I think again was tied to the Boston Foursquare Club, where they did a points per serve method. And again, I don't know if that was the term or what, but that's the way that I can explain it, which means that every time somebody, whoever the person was that was in square four, which is a whole nother debate that we can talk about, what to call the person who's actually serving, like is it the king square? Is it square four? Yeah, whatever it is. But so every time that person serves, they get a point. And then that gets tracked, obviously, and whoever gets the most amount of points within a certain time period wins. I I've been very how do I say this? Diplomatic and in pretending as if I was okay with this. I mean, it's the way I won, so but I very much don't like it, or I didn't like it because again, we've gotten away from that for many, many, many different reasons, and it's not just because that's the way that I like. I didn't grow up that way. It wasn't ingrained in me. And I actually went to bat with the folks, that ran the event, um, and really kind of unleashed my feelings on why I think that that isn't the best way to determine a winner and the object of the game. We have a few minutes left, so but I'm gonna stop there. And when we pick things up next show, we will start with talking through all the reasons why um, I think the World Championships went away from the points per serve and went into the outs method of the object of the game and how to win. A little bit of a cliffhanger for you all, and we will we'll definitely obviously talk about a lot of other things as well. We want to dive into, you know what? We'll use the last few minutes. I'll just give you like a very high level of the topics that we want to discuss. And then that way that might help you all in determining, if something wasn't mentioned, you can kind of let us know and we can happy to add it. We want to talk about the court, gym versus cement, the dimensions of the court, court size, the lines, uh, outside lines, inside lines, when they should be considered being in, when they should be considered being out, as far as if the ball hits it and you're deemed as being out, the ball itself, your environment, uh, playing your environment, do we want to talk about the divisions that are specifically within the World Championships in terms of like um, male, female, children, ages, things like that? We want to talk about the points and the score being transparent versus it being like kind of a mystery. Um, this is one that I am looking forward to talking through with you, which is this was a big thing that came up last championship, which is how to determine the order of
Ah,
people in the
yes.
squares or in line, because there are big advantages. Well, or I don't know if it's big, but advantages to being in the squares or being in line, etc. So that's one that I think will be good for us to talk about, not only because it'll be fun to talk about, but I definitely would love to kind of implement that into the rules of the World Championship so it's as fair as it can possibly be. Um,
So there's so many topics that are in here.
yeah,
Certainly strategy, all of the different rules,
yeah,
refereeing, officiating. One of my favorites, which I thought you were just going to mention, was who has the right to the ball?
yes.
Is there a baseline like baseball? Uh, is there such a thing as a tie? Does tie go to the hitter? I mean, where do all these rules end up coming out? And one thing that this made me think of was one of my favorite classes in college was game theory. And there's a lot of game theory that has yet to be applied to Foursquare. Who has incentives to do what? What does this push you to do? If this is the
Mm-hmm.
rule, how does that shift your strategy?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of just sort of game design and game theory that can be worked on here that I'm kind of looking forward to doing.
And speaking of strategy, I know that, we're in a way we're kind of competing against each other. So we may want to be a little careful of what you share with me, what I share with you, but it's okay. So we're gonna get into that, but there's so much strategy. It's not just fit. I mean, physical is definitely part of it for sure, but it's not just being athletic and having good eye-hand coordination and just hitting the ball. It's not blindly hitting the ball and just staying alive and just there is so much more to it. Almost I'm a fan of Survivor, the TV show, which has been going on now for over 20 years, and it's almost there's so much just strategery when it comes to, you know, where to hit it, who to hit it to, who to try to get out, who you maybe don't want to get out. Um, uh, uh, so much to get to there, which we will. But and maybe what like your personal strategies are, what my personal strategies are. So we're gonna get into all of that and more. There's just a lot here that we didn't even touch upon, but we want to thank you all for watching or listening to our very first show. As you can tell, we're just a couple of Foursquare enthusiasts who met each other at the last championship, and we've been talking about for literal months now to kind of get together. What we want to do, maybe a podcast or, well, at first we just wanted to, Dan and I just
Just
wanted to
chat.
chat, and we're like, you know what? Maybe other people would want to be involved in this. So we kind of been tabling it, and here we are. We figured this was the best forum to do it. Um, and we'd love to hear your feedback. I think liking in YouTube is like a thing, so feel free to do that if you'd like. But honestly, if this is just Dan and I talking for an hour every month about Foursquare, and it's just him and I, and maybe whoever else is listening, then so be it. But Dan, as always, a pleasure, sir. Um,
Always good to talk.
I will see you next week. We'll figure out
Yeah.
what we're doing. And yeah, be on the lookout for oh, I think notification, that might be a thing too. So maybe you want to like get that notification thing going because that way you'll be made aware of when we do another one of these shindigs. But we're hoping, as you heard, maybe for at some point in the beginning of November for our next time together. We'll pick it up where we left off. Dan, thank you.
Absolutely. Good to be here.
All right, everyone. Bye.